For years, the world believed that once Queen Elizabeth II passed, her legacy would naturally flow to the next generation quietly, respectfully, without controversy. But behind the palace gates, something very different was unfolding, not with speeches, not with public announcements, but with a decision so subtle, most people missed it entirely. It began with what didn't happen. At major royal appearances, cameras noticed something unusual. Queen Camilla, now standing beside the king, was not wearing the late queen's most iconic jewelry. No signature brooches, no deeply symbolic necklaces, no unmistakable pieces tied directly to Elizabeth's 7-decade reign. At first, it seemed like coincidence. Then it became a pattern. That's when whispers began. According to palace insiders, a quiet line had been drawn, and it wasn't drawn by King Charles. It was drawn by Princess Anne, known inside royal circles as the family's enforcer of tradition, and has never sought headlines. But when it comes to her mother's legacy, she is said to be uncompromising, and sources suggest that when discussions turned to who could wear which pieces of the Queen's jewelry, and made her position unmistakably clear, this wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about rivalry. It was about something far deeper: ownership, symbolism, and who truly has the authority to carry the Queen's image into the future. Because in the royal family, jewelry is never just jewelry, and what Princess Anne did next may have quietly reshaped power inside the palace, without the public ever being told. Inside the British monarchy, power rarely announces itself. It moves quietly through protocol, tradition, and decisions that never make headlines but change everything. And few understand that machinery better than Princess Anne. Long before the public began speculating about Queen Camilla's jewelry choices, and had already positioned herself as the quiet guardian of her mother's legacy. This was not a role she asked for, but one that naturally fell to her. As Queen Elizabeth II's only daughter, and spent decades watching how her mother used symbolism, especially jewelry, to communicate authority, continuity, and restraint. To the Queen, jewelry was never about luxury. Each piece had a purpose. A brooch could signal diplomacy. A necklace could mark mourning. A tiara could represent the stability of the crown itself. And Anne, more than anyone else in the family, absorbed those lessons. After the Queen's passing, attention quickly turned to the future. King Charles ascended the throne, Camilla became queen consort, and Prince William stepped closer to his destiny. But behind the scenes, there was another question, one far more sensitive than titles or ceremonies. Who now decides how the Queen is remembered? According to those familiar with palace protocol, the late Queen's jewelry collection falls into multiple categories. Some items are part of the royal collection, held in trust for the nation. Others are deeply personal, associated with Elizabeth's private life rather than her public role. And then there are pieces that exist in a delicate middle ground, objects that became inseparable from her image as monarch. It was here that Princess Anne reportedly drew a firm boundary. Sources suggest and believed that certain jewels, especially those most closely associated with her mother's reign, should not be repurposed or reinterpreted in a new era. To her, allowing widespread use risked turning sacred symbols into accessories, something Queen Elizabeth had always avoided. This stance was not aimed at Camilla personally. In fact, insiders say Anne's concern was institutional, not emotional. She viewed the jewelry as part of the crown's memory, not a reward for status. And in Anne's world, memory must be protected, not reshaped. Camilla's position, however, is uniquely complex. As queen consort, she carries immense responsibility, but also the weight of history. Public acceptance has been carefully built over many years, and every appearance is measured against the legacy of those who came before her, especially Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana. That scrutiny makes jewelry choices especially sensitive. Palace observers noted that Camilla's public appearances increasingly featured understated pieces, often modern and symbolic in their own right, but notably absent were the Queen's most recognizable jewels. Whether by instruction or mutual understanding, the message was clear: some items were off-limits. Anne's influence in this process should not be underestimated. While she holds no constitutional power, she commands deep respect within the family. Known for her no-nonsense approach, and has always been trusted to act in the monarchy's long-term interest, rather than its short-term image. To her, protecting her mother's legacy was not about sentiment, it was duty, and duty, in Anne's view, does not bend easily. What makes this moment so telling is how quietly it unfolded. There were no leaks, no public disagreements, no visible tension. Just an absence noticed first by cameras, then by commentators, and finally by the public. In the royal world, absence often speaks louder than presence. As the monarchy navigates anew, Princess Anne's role appears less ceremonial and more custodial. She is not shaping the future but safeguarding the past so the future cannot erase it. And in doing so, she has reminded everyone inside the palace of a simple truth Queen Elizabeth lived by. Not everything passes on. Some things are preserved. While Princess Anne's position may have set boundaries, it was King Charles who found himself navigating the consequences. As monarch, he carries ultimate responsibility for the crown's public image, but within the royal family, influence is often shared, negotiated, and carefully balanced. Those close to the palace described Charles' approach as cautious and conciliatory. Unlike his mother, who ruled through quiet certainty, Charles is known for weighing emotional considerations alongside tradition. This makes moments involving family legacy especially delicate. According to royal commentators, Charles understood Anne's concerns immediately. He had lived his entire life under the shadow of his mother's reign and knew how carefully she curated her public image. Jewelry, to Elizabeth, was not ornamental, it was institutional. Charles respected that distinction. At the same time, he was acutely aware of Camilla's position. Camilla's journey into her role has been defined by patience and restraint. Over the years, she earned public trust not through bold gestures, but by avoiding them. As queen consort, she has consistently signaled that she sees her role as supportive, not competitive with the past. That mindset appears to have guided her response, rather than challenging limitations or asserting entitlement. Camilla reportedly chose accommodation. Insiders suggest she understood that wearing certain jewels could unintentionally reopen old emotional wounds for the public, especially those tied to Queen Elizabeth's long reign or Princess Diana's memory. By stepping back, Camilla may have been protecting not only herself, but the monarchy as a whole. This quiet alignment between Charles and Anne reveals something crucial about how the monarchy functions in moments of transition. Decisions are rarely unilateral. Instead, they emerge from consensus, often led by those with the strongest moral authority rather than the highest title. Princess Anne holds that authority. Her reputation as the most hardworking royal is matched by her credibility. She does not seek influence, which paradoxically gives her more of it. When Anne speaks, she is believed to be acting for the institution, not herself, and Charles, aware of the fragility of his reign's early years, appears to have valued that steadiness. But perhaps the most attentive observer in all of this is Prince William. Sources say William has been watching these developments closely, not as a participant, but as a student of monarchy. As the future king, he understands that symbols matter. How the crown handles legacy today will shape how it is trusted tomorrow. William's own approach to royal imagery has been notably restrained. Alongside Catherine, he has favored continuity over spectacle, often referencing his grandmother's sense of duty rather than reinventing it. For William, Anne's actions may serve as a blueprint, proof that preservation, not reinvention, earns respect. This episode also underscores an unspoken reality within the royal family. Power does not always align with title. Camilla may be queen consort, Charles may be king, but Anne represents something equally potent: memory. And memory, within a monarchy built on continuity, is a powerful currency. What the public sees is a harmonious front. What exists behind it is a careful choreography of influence, respect, and restraint. There has been no official announcement, no confirmation, no denial. Just choices. And in the royal world, choices reveal far more than words ever could. As the monarchy continues to adjust to a post-Elizabeth era, moments like this quietly define its character. Will it honor the past without being trapped by it? Can it evolve without erasing what made it stable? Princess Anne seems to believe the answer lies in limits. Limits on access, limits on symbolism, limits on reinterpretation, and King Charles, at least for now, appears to agree. What makes this moment so powerful is not what was said, but what was noticed. The British monarchy has always relied on symbolism, and the public, perhaps more than the palace realizes, has become remarkably skilled at reading those symbols. It began with small observations. Royal watchers pointed out the absence of familiar brooches once worn by Queen Elizabeth II. Commentators compared photographs, noting how certain pieces seemed to have vanished from public view. Slowly, discussions moved from fashion columns into broader conversations about legacy, respect, and authority. Importantly, the reaction was not outrage but recognition. Many members of the public appeared to understand the restraint. Queen Elizabeth's image remains deeply rooted in collective memory. For millions, she represented stability across decades of change. Seeing her most iconic symbols handled cautiously felt appropriate, even reassuring. In that sense, Princess Anne's position may have aligned more closely with public sentiment than anyone expected. Media coverage reflected this shift, rather than framing the issue as conflict. Many analysts described it as an example of institutional maturity. The monarchy, often criticized for clinging too tightly to tradition, was now being praised for knowing when not to move too quickly. Camilla's quiet compliance further softened the narrative. By avoiding controversy and maintaining her low-profile approach, she reinforced the idea that her role is complementary, not competitive. That distinction matters deeply in a monarchy still healing from decades of emotional complexity. Several royal historians noted that consorts throughout history have navigated similar limitations. Their influence came not from inheritance, but from discretion. In that context, Camilla's choices place her firmly within a long historical pattern rather than outside it. What also emerged was a renewed appreciation for Princess Anne. Long regarded as the monarchy's most reliable figure, Anne's actions reminded the public why she commands such respect. She does not speak often, but when she acts, her intentions are rarely questioned. That credibility is rare and invaluable. Social commentary reflected this sentiment. Online discussions framed Anne as a stabilizing force, someone willing to prioritize institutional integrity over personal comfort. In an era defined by visibility and self-promotion, her restraint stood out. For Prince William, the moment carried additional weight. As someone preparing for future leadership, William is acutely aware that public trust is built over time and lost quickly. This episode demonstrated how subtle decisions can reinforce that trust without dramatic gestures. William's own relationship with legacy is complex. He carries the memory of both his grandmother and his mother, two figures whose public images were shaped in very different ways. Observing how unprotected Elizabeth's legacy may influence how William chooses to honor both women when his time comes. The larger implication of this decision lies in what it reveals about the monarchy's evolving strategy. Rather than pushing forward aggressively, the institution appears to be pausing, taking stock of how symbols are perceived, and choosing restraint over assertion. That pause may prove essential in an era where every action is scrutinized instantly. There has been no formal confirmation of any restriction, no palace briefing, no public clarification. And yet, the message has landed. The late Queen's image remains intact. Her symbols remain untouched, and the monarchy has avoided reopening emotional debates that could distract from its future. Sometimes, preservation is the most powerful form of leadership. Princess Anne may never publicly acknowledge her role in this moment. King Charles may never explain the choice. Camilla may never address the absence. As the British monarchy moves forward, it is becoming clear that its survival will not depend on grand gestures or dramatic reinvention. Instead, it will hinge on something far more difficult to master: restraint. The decisions surrounding the late Queen's jewelry may seem minor on the surface, but in reality, it represents a larger philosophy taking hold inside the palace. One that understands the power of symbols, and more importantly, the risk of misusing them. Queen Elizabeth II built her reign on consistency. Across 70 years, she rarely explained herself, rarely defended her choices, and almost never reacted publicly to controversy. Her authority came from steadiness, from knowing when to act and when to remain silent. Princess Anne appears to have inherited that instinct. by drawing limits around how her mother's legacy is handled, and has reinforced a core royal principle. Not everything must be reinterpreted for a new era. Some elements gain strength by remaining unchanged. King Charles, despite being the central figure of this transition, has chosen not to challenge that principle. In doing so, he has signaled that his reign will not be defined by erasing the past, but by respecting it. This approach may frustrate those who expected swift modernization, but it reassures those who value continuity. For Camilla, this moment has quietly clarified her role. Rather than asserting entitlement, she has demonstrated alignment with institutional priorities. That choice may not generate headlines, but it builds trust within the family and with the public. In a monarchy where acceptance is earned over time, patience remains a powerful strategy. Prince William, watching closely, stands to gain the most from this lesson. As the future king, he will inherit not only a crown, but a complicated emotional landscape shaped by memory, symbolism, and public expectation. The way this situation was handled offers a blueprint for leadership in a modern monarchy. Listen more than you speak, preserve more than you claim, and never underestimate the weight of history. William's own public image suggests he understands this instinctively. His emphasis on stability, responsibility, and long-term thinking mirrors the values and has embodied for decades. When his time comes, moments like this will inform how he balances progress with preservation. What makes this episode remarkable is its quietness. There were no leaks intended to inflame, no public disagreements, no forced resolutions, just an understanding shared among those who carry the institution forward, that some symbols must be protected, not passed around. In an age obsessed with visibility, the monarchy has chosen invisibility, and that choice may be its greatest strength. The late Queen's jewelry remains what it always was, a language, one that speaks of duty, history, and continuity. By choosing caution over access, the royal family has allowed that language to remain intact. Princess Anne may never be publicly credited. King Charles may never be asked. Camilla may never comment, but the outcome speaks for itself. The monarchy has taken a step forward by standing still, and in doing so, it has reminded the world of a truth Queen Elizabeth II lived by until her final days. Legacy is not something you wear. It's something you protect.